In this presentation, we will take a look at multiple choice questions related to governmental accounting, going through those questions and then practicing test-taking skills with them. First question, which is correct about depreciation? Either A, depreciation expense should be recorded in the appropriate governmental funds. B, depreciation expense is recorded in the governmental fund, but not in the government-wide activity. C, no depreciation is reported in the governmental accounting. D, depreciation is not recorded in the governmental funds, but is recorded in the governmental activities accounts. Okay, let's go through this again using the process of elimination. Which is correct about depreciation? Now, before we go into this, note that what we're really asking here is the two kind of a method. So obviously, when we're thinking about should depreciation be there or not, if we talk about normal accounting, it would be there. We would have it on the financial statements. Which ones are related to normal accounting? Where does normal accounting happen? Well, it's going to happen on the government-wide activities. That's where we would expect to see normal accounting and therefore expect to see depreciation. Maybe proprietary funds as well. Won't be in there in the modified accrual-based funds, those being the largest group of funds, the governmental funds. So I would expect to see this. I'd be able to say, hey, I'd like to see something saying it's going to be in the government-wide type of activities. Probably not in the governmental funds. Those are the funds that use the modified accrual, therefore not having long-term assets. If it doesn't have long-term assets, it's not going to have depreciation, which is related to the long-term assets. So keeping that in mind, let's go through this one more time. A says depreciation expense should be recorded in the appropriate governmental funds. Now, that sounds reasonable because you even have this qualifying term, appropriate governmental funds, but all the governmental funds, although it's the largest category, use modified accrual basis, and therefore none of them are going to have depreciation because none of them have long-term assets. And then, so it's not that. And so B says depreciation expense is recorded in the governmental fund, but not in the government-wide activity. And that's reversed. You would expect it to be in the government-wide activity, not in the funds, the governmental funds. C says no depreciation is reported in governmental accounting, like not at all, not anywhere. I would assume that to be, that's not the case. And then D says depreciation is not recorded in governmental funds, but is recorded in the governmental activities accounts. So the activities mean the government-wide type of accounts, yes, not in the governmental funds. Governmental funds, it sounds like that wouldn't be right because you'll note that it has funds, which sounds like a big grouping of funds, and it is the largest grouping of funds. But those are the funds that are on a modified accrual basis and therefore don't have depreciation. So final answer is D, which is correct about depreciation. D, depreciation is not recorded in the governmental funds, but is recorded in the governmental activities accounts. Next question. Which of the following is true of capital project funds? Either A, encumbrance accounting is used, B, encumbrances accounting is not normally used, but appropriations is, or C, no budgetary accounts are used. Let's go through this again using the process of elimination. Which of the following is true of capital projects funds? So when we consider capital projects funds, I would always go back to this and say, well, are we talking about the government-wide type of activity, the entity as a whole, or funds? Obviously, we're talking about a fund, not government-wide type of activities. If we think about funds, are we talking about types of funds that are going to be on a modified accrual basis or on an accrual basis? Any governmental fund, as is the capital projects fund, will be on the modified accrual basis. That being said, then we're going to go into this and see and look at it. Now, the modified accrual, you'll notice we're talking about a term, encumbrances, which is a funny term. That's not on normal accrual accounting. We don't have encumbrances on normal accrual accounting. So you would think that encumbrances would be something possibly on the fund accounting, modified accrual, not on normal accrual accounting. So I would think that it would be something possibly that would be there that wouldn't be on, the normal accrual for the government wide. So if A says encumbrances accounting is used, that seems like okay. And then B says encumbrance accounting is not normally used, but appropriations are. So I would think between the two, I would go with A. And then C says no budgetary accounts are used. Now, encumbrances, I would call it more of a clearing account than kind of budgetary accounts, but technically they fall under budgetary accounts as well. So therefore, C is not it if encumbrances are used. Therefore, final answer A, encumbrances are used in the capital projects funds. And we usually use encumbrances when we have like an estimate of the contract or we sign the contract then we put the contract amount on as an encumbrance, kind of a holding account, until we actually record the related expenditures when the expenses have been incurred or expenditures incurred under the modified accrual basis. Next question. Transfers from the general fund to the capital project fund is reported in the capital projects fund as either A, fund balance, B, revenue, C, other financing source, or D, current liability. Let's go through this again using the process of elimination. Transfers from the general fund to the capital projects fund is reported in the capital projects fund as what? Again, whenever we go through these, we want to think back and say, well, where are we? Where are we reporting right now? Are we in the government-wide activities, the company as a whole, or are we in a specific fund? If we're in a fund, which fund are we in? Do they use the modified accrual basis or normal accrual accounting? Most of them, governmental funds, the largest group, uses modified accrual basis. So here it could be a little confusing because it names a bunch of funds. We have a transfer from the general fund, so there's one fund, to the capital project fund, there's the other fund. So where are we? We're in the capital projects fund. That's where the money went to. That would make sense because the general fund would be the one with the money that would be transferring it to a capital project, the one needing the money in order to make the capital project. So the money's going into the capital project fund. Keeping that in mind, it's going to be recorded in the capital project fund as a fund balance. No, that's like an equity section type of thing, so that wouldn't be there or similar to in a for-profit. B says revenue, maybe, kind of, because it's going into the capital project fund. It's going to be increasing the activity, which we're going to record on the temporary accounts, kind of like income statement accounts. C says other financing source. That sounds appropriate. It's another financing source. And then D says current liability. It's not going to go back on that current liability because you might think that because we're going to pay it back or something from one fund to the other, but we're going to record the activity in the modified accrual. So it's going to be somewhere in a timing type account. So between revenue and other financing sources, the two kind of accounts that would increase what would be similar to net income, it's going to be other financing sources. Now, other financing sources is on kind of similar to what would be like the income statement in a for-profit company or business or whatever. It does increase what would be similar to net income, but it's a different category than we would put in on revenue. So when we put it in what would be similar to like the income statement, we're going to group it at the bottom of it as opposed to up in the revenue section, but it's going to increase the basically what would be like net income type of number.